Good morning. My name is Samantha Mirabal. I'm with Melco's application team. We're doing our design shop talk today. Wow, help if I can talk today. Anyway, we're doing our design shop talk to see what questions you guys might have, try to get them answered. I have a few questions that were sent in ahead of time. If you have questions while we're live, type them in on the chat. I have another monitor set off to the side here where I can look over and see what questions come in while we're live. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure both platforms are open. Facebook is up and YouTube is up. Yeehaw. All right. So I'll start off with the questions that were sent in and type in whatever you want. Don't send them privately. Type them in on the chats. And I will try to get those answered. And it looks like sound's up. Fantastic. All right. So I'm trying to put AMAYA, so the word AMAYA, on a sweatshirt. Designs that size. I'm doing this font. Fill stitch for over 30. That seems small to me, but okay. Common auto split, that's cool. And then 127 points and stitch. All right, so those are the errors you're getting. All right, so let's go do it. There's DesignShop. So Magnolia Sky. Oh, not Magdalene. Magnolia Sky. There we go. And it's AMAYA. And then your size was 6.56 by 3.72. 656. All right, so down here I'm going to put 6.56. And this was 7.2, so I'm going to turn that off and make that 7.2. Cool. All right, and then over in the design checker, yeah, we have these two. All right, so if you click on them, it gives you a thing where they are. So now we got to zoom in and see what that actually is. And if you look at it, it's the underlay. So these are on these underlays. So it's basically saying you've got a really long satin stitch going in. Zigzag going there. So that's just a matter of adjusting the underlay, right? So you can come over here and set it to be whatever you want and apply it. And those go away, right? So I just put it back. So let me go do that again. So if I turn this off and say, well, maybe you want an edge walk and fill, maybe that. There we go. So there, it gets rid of those errors, right? So it's just in the underlay is where that's happening. Okay. Now you did say, oh, the other thing you said you did, you went into top stitching, you told it to be common auto split, which is cool. You said you had this to 30. That doesn't make much sense to me personally. If you like it, cool. I usually leave it between 60 and 80, 60 to 70, somewhere in there. But if you want it smaller, that's cool. So, but 30 seems small because that means if you have an auto split and your stitch is 31, roughly, you're going to have your auto split around 15, which seems like just a whole bunch of really small satin stitches. But I mean, it's a personal preference, so it's not going to hurt anything, but it's just not what I would do personally. I would leave that a little bit bigger. Cool. All right, so yes, that's where those errors are coming from. It was the underlay. So basically you just click on it, go zoom in so you can figure out what it actually is on, and then you can address it. All right, what other questions? I don't see any typed in, so I'm going to keep going. This is, to your point, yeah, it's not a design shop question. This is a OS question, but that's all right. So in design shop, you have, when it's in an OFM format, you have a certain number of stitches. When you bring it into your AOS, it changes it. There's a design filter that processes when you bring it in. If you don't want it to do that, what you'd want to do is save it off as a DST or EXP or turn that filter off. I don't have AOS installed on this computer, nor do I have MOS, but it's under preferences. There's a filter, and there's some settings there that'll process the numbers different upon opening. So if you turn those off, then that goes away, or just open up a DST or EXP, and it'll use the stitch count that's there. But yeah, that is a filter. It is associated with AOS, and MOS has it too. All right, I'm doing this thing. It's not huge. It's like a left chest size, so 3.5 inches. Cool. It's going on a performance shirt those performance hoodies that are really lightweight. I love those, by the way. Anyway, using 2 layers of performance cutaway. Good call. Sprayed with adhesive. I like that. You want them to, the borders to pop and stitch nicely. Do I do a zigzag underlay? Yeah, I would. I put the white pattern halfway through those underlines. Good call. So I just want to make sure I use the right underlay for the satin stitches. Yeah, so for thin fabrics, it's the entire design you need to be concerned about, right? So that what underlay you put on that satin stitch is not going to be as detrimental as the one on the fill. Good morning, Beth and Colleen. Thanks for joining today. So that fill is going to move stuff around predominantly because you're going to do that fill first and then you're going to do the borders, at which point everything's already moved and now it is going to be where it's going to be. So what underlay you do on those satins isn't going to affect the design overly much, in my opinion. Do you want to have a super heavy zigzag like a density of 6? No. Because the key to your performance fabrics is to keep things lighter, right? So lighter density, not as many stitches in that fabric. All right. So a zigzag underlay sounds like a good call. Having it overlapping it again is a good call. I would actually not only stick the stabilizers together, I would spray the shirt, the stabilizer, and stick it to the shirt and then hoop it. That way you avoid stretching. Because if you take the shirt, make it nice and flat, take your stabilizers, which have already been sprayed together, and you make that a nice sandwich, you make sure now when you go to hoop it, there's not that tendency to overstretch it. When you overstretch it, that's how you, as soon as it unhoops, it goes, and that's how you get all that crazy puckering, right? So I would do that. I would lighten up any of the underlays on that fill. You still want to make sure it's secure, but you don't want to hammer it to death, right? So yeah, a zigzag seems like a good call. I would add pull offset to all those satin stitches just because it's going to shrink some, so it's just a good practice. But that all sounds like you're doing the right things there. All right. Someone has a customer that wants an exact color match. They gave this stuff. Number one, if you want exact color matches, in my opinion, or my experience, never use this stuff. It's not good. I wouldn't do it. I would tell them to give me something physical and I'd match to that. If you're so the way industry tends to do color matches is with Pantone. You can actually buy a Pantone color cards, and it's a book. It's like a paint swatch book, but it's to a very standard color selection. So those Pantones are repeatable everywhere, right? So you can take those and then match it. Tell them, hey, what Pantone? You go find that Pantone in that color card. Now you go to your threads and you go, it's that thread. But this is a hard pass for me personally. Whenever people give me that, I say I can do my best, but when you match to RGBs and monitors, everything changes, right? So I don't find a good way to do that. Now, if you have a Pantone color, if they provide you one, but you don't have the chart and you don't want to spend the, those charts are very expensive. So if you don't want to buy one, you can take that Pantone number and go to the supplier. So Madeira and Isacord, all of them have a Pantone equivalent. And even on the color cards, which I have managed to bury my desk in paper, so I don't know where my color card is. It's in this paper pile somewhere, but I don't want to hit some, I don't know. Nope. All right. I'm going to quit digging. But on the color card itself, sometimes they have the Pantones listed. But if you go to their website, you can say, hey, it's this Pantone and what color matches. And it'll say, hey, it's one of these 3. There's not an exact match. Or, hey, there's an exact match. It's this number of this rayon thread. So that's how I would go about that. I would tell them to send me something that is an exact color match of what they want. One of the things I tend to do, because none of my clients are local, I'll tell them they can go into a paint, any of the Walmarts or Home Depots or whatever, and find a paint swatch and find the color that they want, and they can mail it to me. It's cheap that way, or whatever they want. So that's just something physical in your hand to go hold against the thread. That's how you get a good match in good lighting. All right, we have some questions typed in. Let me scroll up. Is there a simple way to use auto trace? Is there a simple way to auto trace a vector file to create a single continuous running stitch path and avoid a million trims? Depends on how the vector file was done. If not really. So what you would have to do is, well, let me back it up. If it's going to be a running stitch, then there is no real easy way to do that. Now, if you use column stitches, yes, you can tell it to convert and then you can tell it to auto sequence. But the running stitch, it doesn't auto sequence correctly right now. So no, you can trace the outside easily if each shape. Let me go over here and just do something rather than waving my hands at a screen. Right, so if I have vector shapes of any kind, right? Whatever. All right, so if I have clean shapes drawn, I can take each one of these shapes, hold the shift key and tell it to convert over, and each one of these become a running stitch. So you can do that easily, right? But if you have a thing that has all kinds of lines throughout it, like you've got a line drawing with lots of features on the inside, and you tell it to auto convert, it's going to take each element and create the line, and then it'll auto sequence around, but it'll have a bunch of trims. I think that was even last week. We had some spaghetti up on the screen that was that way, and really the only way to do it is as column stitches. Those you can tell it to auto sequence, and that works great, or trace it manually. A line work I always do manually myself. It's quicker for me than having it auto trace and then going and moving everything around. Okay. Kyle says they've never used a performance stabilizer. What makes a difference? The performance stabilizers are really thin. There's one called Cut Performance. There's another one that's called Weblon. They're thin, they're light, but they're very stable, right? So when you're dealing with lightweight fabrics, sometimes it doesn't look good in a finished product to use a really heavy stabilizer on the back, right? So I could put a massive stabilizer behind this, which is a really lightweight fabric, and it'll look like this heavy badge hanging off. Whereas if I use Weblon or that Cut Performance stuff or any of those performance thin lightweight things, it's going to end up looking better because the stabilizer doesn't give that haloed badge effect. Does that make sense, Kyle? All right. Yeah. I have a primer understitch. Okay, let me back up. I have a primer understitch, and I'm trying to do a border, but I keep getting design check. Too many threads overlapping. I don't understand the question, I'm going to be honest. So I think what you're saying is you've done a primer like this. So you came over here on this thing and you said do a primer stitch. And then you've got a whole bunch of designs. So let me say I've got a fill here and I've got a fill here. And that likely is going to tell me I have too many layers of thread, right? So in this case, what I'd want to do is look at it and decide for myself and not what the computer is saying, is this okay, or should I sculpt out the stitching under here? So in this case, I probably would not want all this fill under this other fill, but the primer stitch is fine. It's basically an underlay, so I can leave that one alone. So I would take this one I want to subtract from, hold the control key, click on this, and then click there, and you'll see it subtracted it. It's still going to tell me I have more than 2 layers, but now this is where people come into effect. Is that, is this overlap okay? Yes. For me, I would say yes, that's okay. But that's what it's showing you, is it's telling you, hey, these things are overlapping. Do you really want to? Because now I've got the orange thread, the blue thread, and then this primer stitch. So it's going, you have more than 3. It might be dense. That's essentially what it's telling you to look. Go assess it for yourself and decide if it's okay. I would let those two fly because that's fine in my opinion. Now this, no underlay on that, no underlay on that. Again, that's fine because that's that type of stitch. Okay, so Colleen, does that help? Yeah, no problem with the pendant. All right. So let's see. I have version 11. Is there a way to make a letter with a decorative stitch? Yeah, kind of, right? So I can do this, right? So, yes, there is, but you've got to do a little bit of work. That's going to be the short answer for you. Okay, so I've got this thing. I'm going to change that to a decorative. And now I just made an O. Or I can tell it with beads. Or I can come over here and make it with that one. Ew, I don't like that one. Let's try another one. Diamond is cute. Oh, where's the diamond? D? There it is. No. This is what happens when it... What is it? Spin? I think it's called. There's one that it's... that one's alright. So yeah, you can... So all I'm doing is I'm tracing something with a normal. You can tell it to be a decorative up front. But like here, I go that, hit enter, and oops, backspace. All right, sorry, I'm clicking rather than talking, but let me finish clicking since I've committed to this. All right, take that one, and let's make that the same spin. So yeah, you can turn any of them, anything you can draw into a decorative. So Sherry, does that help at all? You could do other things, like if I trace this, I did shift click, that'll give me outlines of it. So now I've got this outline, which I'd want to go delete that overlap. But once I have this outline, maybe it's, you want this as a decorative. I don't like that, but so you could try that depending on the font. It might work for you. So that I really hate though. So there you go. But here, I would come in here and delete those other stitches. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can do. It's just, you've got to be creative with it and think about what it is you're trying to achieve, right? Okay. All right. When there's a thread break or bobbin break during a pattern fill, not the underlay part, but the top part, reversing it 10 or 15 would take care of the locking in stitches. Yeah. So what would you do? What I do usually when I have a break on a satin, on a top stitch, so anything that is not an underlay that's not going to get sewn over again, but a top, something that your customers see, I usually hit the backspace, the backup button on the keypad until I hear the beep. I let it run a little bit and I hit stop. And that's almost always plenty of distance back for it to overlap. There was a question, how did I do this quick? So, but Beth, that's all I do is literally hit reverse. And when I hear it beep, I let go of it. I let the machine go not long. I usually just take a big breath and then hit stop. So it goes a handful more stitches and then I stop, and that's usually plenty. So what I did to create that quick outline is I clicked on whatever it is I want. So this shape I want to trace. I held the shift key down because shift adds, control replaces. All right. So if I hold shift and I click on something, all right. So shift and this will give me running stitches. If I click on this, hold shift and satin stitch, that will give me satin stitches. If I click on this and then say I don't know if this one will work. I'll try it. Shift click. Hey, it did. It converted it all to fills. All right, so if I again take this and hold Control and click, it's going to replace it. So now that text is gone, and so that's the difference. That's the same thing as using this feature right here. It's just hotkeys on the keypad. If you click that button, it's change element type. This lets you think about what you're doing. So I want to change this lettering to a bean stitch, and I want to add it. So there's my adding of a bean stitch. That works on this stuff too, right? So I can take this stuff and say, I want to take those two triangles, now a triangle with a hole, and I want to add a single line center to it. And I can say add or replace. I'm going to add. And there, now I've got my satin stitches added. All right, so I can add borders to that shape. Stop it. I want that one and that one. I just want it visible so you guys can see it. And this one. There you go. All right. Okay, so let's see. Good morning. I have an older AMAYA. I can slow it down to 800 stitches per minute. When I'm done, it goes back to 1200 when you start another design. Yeah, so a lot of the settings, particularly on AMAYA OS, they're saved partially into the design. So when you open them, they're going to be built into, there's data in the file itself as the default. So yeah, you're just going to have to keep on moving it around. Is my thinking right? When choosing a fill, the smooth fill is going to make the fabric move. Wait, sorry. When choosing a fill, the smooth fill is going to move the fabric more than, say, a standard pattern fill that has like 500 less. It can. It really depends on the stitch direction, the grain, and how well it's stabilized. There's more to it than just flat or patterned. A flat fill can move the fabric around a lot. But if you have a good underlay, it minimizes it, right? So it's really more a function of the underlay than the top stitching, in my experience. Now, less stitches, that tends to cause things to move around less. So yeah, that is a thing. But in my experience, it's more about stabilizer and underlay as far as if the fabric itself is going to move around a lot. Then it goes, so stabilizer, underlay, and then it depends on your fabric weight. So if you have a really thin fabric and you're sewing, 10 million stitches in a tiny little spot, the fabric doesn't like that, right? So yes, there is some amount of reducing stitch count that does play a role in it. With my pendant, should I make the first triangle white, triangle up and down, fill in the second long trial, I go left to right? Oh, all right. So the pendant you're talking about, are you talking about this pendant, Beth and Chuck Chesney? Or are you talking about the one we did last week, which was a triangle and a triangle, kind of hanging? I think you're talking about this one. All right, so how would I do this one? I literally would just sew it. Unless you want the stitch direction different here between this one and that one. Are you, just let me know if this is not the design. We're talking about the other one from last week. But my suggestion would be to start there, sew in one direction, and then, I would just sew it from here to there. Start here on the red, do a running stitch up, do this red, then come back around, do that one, and then I would do the yellow, and then I would do this stuff. That's how I would do it. All right. You have a summit, and programming it is easier for you on the OS versus on the Summit. Can you do Melco OS on a Summit? No. You would have to, I don't even know if that's a thing. You would have to change it from a Summit to a EMT 16, sorry, an X. I don't even know if that's possible. I don't think it is because of the connector that comes up there. Not easily anyway. So, no, you just poke on the keypad. You can, oh my gosh, I haven't played with my Summit in a while to do weird things. I believe you can program the color changes in DesignShop. This one I'm not 100% sure on, but let's see, tools, Melco OS settings. You can come over and set up this sort of stuff, set the colors, and then you can tell it to, when these colors are set up correctly, you can put the settings in there. Okay, thank you. I didn't think it could. So yeah, Summit cannot be an EMTX. So good, I was right. Yeah, all right. So thank you for clarifying that. I didn't think it was possible, but what you can do is save the colors here and have it auto choose the colors in Summit. So you can, as long as your OFM is set to the right colors and your thread tree is set to the right colors, you can tell it to auto match everything, and that does the color changes. Then you just got to put in your applique stops and you're done. So I use color matching for lots of my designs where I'm honestly lazy and don't bother optimizing the design for color changes. So I just tell it to auto match. I did a design the other day, which I should be ashamed to say it had 97 color changes in it. That was honestly just me being lazy and not taking the time to fix the design. It sewed great, but it was not peak digitizing. Hey, but it sewed. All right. Let's see. So Kyle answered that. Melco straightened out my misspeak. Well, I didn't misspeak. It's the same thing. All right. Any other questions, everybody? I'm scrolling to make sure I didn't miss anything else. I don't think I did. Okay. So let's see. Do I have any others? Oh, I recently moved. I'm getting ready to set my machine back up. It's been long enough that I don't even know where to start. Can you post some links? Yeah, so I can post some stuff, but where I would suggest is, let's see. Melco's channel talks to me when I go there, so I want to make sure it's not doing that. Playlist. So I would go onto Melco's YouTube, and under playlists, they've got, let's see. Yeah, so there's a full playlist here for this one. Let's see what's on that one. Nope, that's not the one I wanted. Let's go back. Oh, right here, getting started. So there's, depending on what interface you like to use, whether it's the advanced one or the simplified one, there's 50 videos there, 52 there. So I would start with those videos and kind of go from there. So that would be my recommendation, is starting with those. And then if you want to do the digitizing ones, they're here as well. So you've got those. There's a lot of content out here, a lot. All right, and there's even more links like through these DesignShop talks and other things. So, but I would start with those basics. It covers everything. And then we have a link in the comments for you on training resources. So it'll give you links to all kinds of stuff that can get you going. So I would start with those. So here you go, the advanced, simplified, if you want to do digitizing stuff. There's the online training that you can do, all these things. Okay? What other questions might you guys have before I call it a day? All right. So I am on the last of my travels. Next week, assuming the FAA does not decide to cancel my flight, I'm actually going to be flying when we are supposed to be talking. So I'm not going to be available next week. So my next one will be on the 20th. Would I be able to show you how to do something like this? I don't know what like this is. You're commenting on YouTube. Let me see if I go to YouTube, if it shows me anything. It might give me feedback for a minute until I mute it. There we go. Yeah, it does. I don't see any image of what you want to see done. I'm happy to work on something, but if you've got a link or something, I can pull that up. Oh, hang on a sec while you're gathering it to type it in. So, but yeah, like I said, next week I'm out, but I'm going to be in Chicago racing. The issue is a million trims. I don't see a design to be able to help to show you. I don't think comments let you put pictures in them. I don't believe. Oh, you just used, okay. I'll go Google that. I can do that. Okay. So women, something like these. Okay. These are all line art, right? So yeah, to avoid a million trims, you've got to think about them. Like, so if I were going to do something like this, whoa, come back. I would have to plan out how it's done. Can I make it bigger? There it goes. Oh, that's already embroidery. Well, I didn't want to do that. But anyway, so I'd have to plan this out and think about it. So how I would probably do this is start here. I would have my running stitch stop. I would do a walk out and a bean back, or yeah. So I'd do a bean stitch, a walk, and then a bean back, a walk or a bean to here, a running stitch up, and then a bean stitch back. I'd trace this as a bean stitch all the way to here. I would then have another element that walks down and then does a bean stitch up and around. I would stop here and do a new element that walks down, does a walking stitch down, bean stitch up and around, and it keep going to here. I'd walk. When I get here, I'd just do a new element, a bean stitch down and around. So it's really just thinking it through of how do you want it to look and trying to work your way through it, right? So doing being smart about your elements, right? So having this as a bean, like I said, and doing a bean stitch to there, enter. I'm not tracing it right intentionally. I would do a walk stitch up, so it's just one row of thread. I copy and paste to save myself time for retracing, and then I make it start there and end there, and I'd make that one a bean stitch. And the reason I did that is that puts 4 pieces of thread there. This one has 3. If you're plus or minus 1, it ends up looking about the same, right? So I would just work my way around the design thinking about it. So everywhere I get to an intersection, I would stop the element just like I did there. And then I would do a walk down and a bean stitch back. Walk, you know, every time you hit an intersection, you go do that little part of the thread and work your way through it. So yeah, they're just, those designs are beautiful, but it's a thinking game. To me, they're fun because it's a puzzle. How do I get around it with minimizing trims? Okay. And the more you do them, the quicker it becomes. Just click, 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 click. Next thing you're done. Yeah, I always break them up because that's how you're going to get that done. You stop and you, here, I'm gonna do it again. No, I don't want to copy that. All right. I just don't like having art that I didn't pay for. That's why I'm doing just a portion. Right, so literally, if you're running this, stop here, hit enter, I can immediately start clicking with my next element, enter, and then that one I just copy paste, turn it into a bean, and then move the start and stop. Right? So that way this one should be a bean, that one will be a walk, and then a bean back. Oh yeah, converting it over to a vector to then get, no, it takes you, that takes you more time to draw it as a vector and then try to redraw it as this. Just draw it once in DesignShop and be done with it. It's way faster. Like I said, I do a lot of these type of line drawings, and I always do them. I usually stare at the picture and try to pick a starting point, and then once I start it, I just keep trying to every time I get to an intersection, I hit enter to stop that element, and I start clicking a second element. And then anytime I do one of these where it's coming out and back, I copy and paste. Okay, do you think, all right, so Beth, we're back to this thing. So this question is a follow-on to this guy. All right, do you think for that design, is there less movement for the same fill on a regular hoodie as opposed to a thin performance one for that? Honestly, in my opinion, hoodies move around a lot more due to the fluff. So the hoodies, I would pay more attention to an edge walk and an underlay before I sewed anything. And like I said, controlling movement, particularly on those type of materials, is, in my experience, more about the underlay than it is about the top stitching. So you have a lot more forgiveness on this fill if you do a good job with the underlay. If your underlay is insufficient, everything moves, right? So making sure you have it stabilized well, and then you have a solid, well thought through underlay is going to be the key to that. Okay, what other questions might you guys have? Oh, one more thing on this thing. Oh, I already undid it. Boo. One thought. Last week I did, I'm just going to do one element and turn this off for a minute. So instead of using a bean stitch, right? So a bean stitch A bean stitch puts 3 pieces of thread at each of these locations, right? So instead of that, you can play with some of these other stitch types under decorative, which are a ton of fun. I like this one a lot for line work. It's a little bit thicker than a bean stitch, but not as thick as a satin stitch. So I like that stitch a lot. Like, I use it a lot. And then this one is one I created during the live last week, and it's kind of a faux bean stitch. It staggers it, so it's more like a stem stitch that you do by hand, so that it staggers the needle penetration, so you don't get that really hard satin, that really hard line that you get if it's a straight bean. So if this were a bean stitch, you get those, it looks like dots almost when it sews, because it's going, every stitch is going in the same hole. This staggers it. In the same way, if I take the same one and turn that into a decorative of type these chain stitches, I can, go to the properties. I like them a little thinner. You don't need to do that. It's just, that's a me thing. So anyway, those are more options for you on line work. Like I said, I use that a lot. I use this a lot, but this one, when it goes around like sharp points, it does weird things. Right? So like sometimes I don't care for that. So if you like this and you don't want that, what do? You have to break it apart and then adjust your points, right? And it'll get rid of it. Not hard, but that's just with that particular bean stitch. If I want it to look like I want it to look, I got to do that. Okay? So again, just in case you didn't see how I did that. So to break any element, I would select it, and right there is split element at selected point. Click that, and now these are 2 separate elements. So back to your line stitch, right? So let's say you are stop it. I broke it at a bad spot. There we go. There, I like that better. So split element. Oh, so back to your thing. Let's say you trace a shape using, like, you just go around the entire thing because it's quick and you don't want to keep stopping and starting. You go around it, all right, and now you go, all right, there's an intersection here. You can add a point, and then you can say split. So now from here, I can come in and do my off, you know, that whatever little feature is over here. And then I can copy, paste, move my start and stop on that second one, start here, stop there, and then I've got the second half already lined up. So you can always do a trace because it's quick, and then go back and add all those little features. So those are all just things I do to speed up my workflow. Yeah, so this chain bean stitch I did during the live last week. So this one is built into the software. Under here, there's chain, medium, thick, and thin. I like the thin one. It's my fave. These others are nice too, but I really like that thin one. So much so I use it a lot. Yeah, it is way faster. You know, going through here, trace it, and then split it wherever you need it. And that split works on the walk, and it also works on the single line. Just select the point. So let's say I had a single line here and I wanted to split it right here. I could add that point and then say split at selected points. Now I can make this one color and another color, or I could do something with it. So the split at a selected point, a single selected point, works on the walk and the single lines. If you have a fill and you want to cut a fill up, so let's say I've got this fill and I want to split it from here to here, I would have to select that point, hold my control key, select that point. So now they're both black, and now it will work on a fill. Yeah, so split at selected point is really nice. The other thing you can do is, let's say I use a curved line, a curved split. And let's say now I want this half to be one color and that half to be another. I can click on this, select the endpoint, say split, and now it splits it along that break line. Another way you can do that, like I said, there's a gazillion ways to do all kinds of stuff. So let's say I want to split this up. I can either select it, or I can go over here, and because it's a fill, I can say break object, and it will break it at that split line. So there's a lot of capability here, and it's super quick to do, quite frankly. I mean, it really is just about being creative and thinking through the problem. Once you do it once, you get faster and faster at it. So I've always had these aha moments that I went, oh, if I only did it this way, it would have been, 2 hours faster. So there's, very simple once you know how to do it. When you don't know how to do it, it seems like forever. All right, what other questions might we have? My heated blanket turned off. I'm cold. I live in Florida and I'm freezing. The rest of the world is laughing at me. Literally, I'm wrapped in a heated blanket. All right. Any other questions before I call it a day? Oh, I made a big old mess all over the screen. Okay. Turn that stuff off. All right, I don't see any other questions. Please don't forget, we do have this form set up on for submitting questions, so that anytime you think of something, you can add pictures on there too. So you can click on it, type in a question, add a picture. If you need to submit more pictures, just go back into the form and say, hey, this is another picture for that past question, or something like that. It's very obvious. I can see who submits it, and that when I go to click on the next line item, it's clearly applies to the thing above. So you can submit multiple pictures if you need to. Just do another entry and it puts them in a spreadsheet for me in a pile. So yeah, submit any questions that you have. That way they're there and you don't have to worry about making the live and any of that. All right. Have a great weekend. I will be back in 2 weeks. I'm going to Chicago to do a High Rocks. It's a fitness event. It's kind of crazy. I love it. So I did one in April and doing another one. So, all right, y'all, have fun. I will talk to you guys in 2 weeks. Bye, everybody.